Good morning and welcome to BBOC Live presented by BetMGM. It's 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Saturday, and we are back. This is the week 0 and college football favorite futures show. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, my fellow BBOC co-hosts, Colin Wilson, Mike Calabrese, and of course, the one and only Mr. Brett McMurphy. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, yes, I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to somebody else. Hit that subscribe button. Really help us out with the new show. We got a lot of exciting stuff planned, including live shows like this, live portions of our podcast. So really excited about that. And before we do get started, I do want to remind everyone that BBOC is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. So yes, we are back. Or are we all the way back? I don't know. Maybe we're 2% back and we're all the way back next Saturday. Colin, what do you think? Are we back?
I mean, it feels like we're back. I was just mentioning before we went live that Tarleton State is taking some money against them. Everybody likes McNeese this morning. If that doesn't get your Jets going to feel like you're back in college football, here we are. McNeese taking steam against Tarleton State. I feel it.
Yeah, I mean, I was up all night as usual for college football Saturday, but I also could see myself like falling asleep for 5 minutes during New Mexico, Montana State later this afternoon. So I'll say we're basically all the way back, but maybe not quite. All right, but we have a lot to get to today. We are going to talk a little week 0 here in just a moment. We'll talk our favorite win totals, favorite futures, and we will reveal each of our college football expanded playoff brackets. We'll see if Ohio State made the cut for Colin. But let's first talk a little week 0. I have nothing off the bat from a side or total perspective, watching a couple lines there, but I do like Jamal Haynes over reception yards for a number of reasons. One, the Florida State defensive line is going to be really good. 2, their secondary is going to be able to be physical with their receivers. Georgia Tech, prolific passing offense. I trust Buster Faulkner have a really good game plan here. They're most likely to be playing from behind, and I think you're going to get a lot of looks here for Haynes, and the weakness of that Florida State defense, where Georgia Tech could potentially take advantage of, is their linebacker group. So I think he could have a couple catches here that with the opportunity to break a few. So that's a look that I have. Colin, you like the Noles here.
I do like the Noles here. It's just a complete mismatch in the trench here for Florida State's offense going up against Georgia Tech's defense. You got to keep in mind, this is a new defensive coordinator moving to the 4-2-5 and Tyler Santucci for the Yellow Jackets. He comes out of that Mike Elko mold from Duke and Texas A&M. But the Seminoles, even though offensive coordinator Alex Atkins isn't there, we know what they're going to do with DJ and Roydell Williams. They're going to line up. They're going to run a ton of outside zone, and they're going to run a ton of counter. And when you look at those run concepts, that puts pressure on the two players that are playing defensive edge for Georgia Tech. When you look at those two players, we're looking at, reserve players, rotational players, undersized, linebackers even thinner. They didn't have any linebackers, had to go to the portal, got 2 of them that have only been in reserve roles. So this defensive front 7, front 6, defensive front is supposed to be one of the worst in the ACC this year. So I think Florida State will have massive advantages in the trench and moving the ball. If DJU just runs the ball and protects it, shouldn't be any worries on the offensive side. And then the Seminole secondary should be able to stop Georgia Tech's explosives. And that's what this offense is for Georgia Tech with Jamal Haynes and Haynes King. They love to have explosive plays from the pass game. They weren't very good at moving the chains. They weren't very good in third downs, but they do look for explosive plays. And that's where the Seminole secondary is going to step up. They finished 31st last year in tackling. They can tackle in space. They don't have a history of missing tackles. And for that reason, that will limit Georgia Tech explosives. I think your prop is great because they're going to have to hit Haynes in the backfield all the time to get some extra yards. So I'm going to go Florida State -10. This is a number that's still steaming down. We haven't seen a 9.5 yet, but I'm not afraid. It's week 0. Lions going the other way. Don't care. Too big of an advantage in the trench for Florida State.
All right, I take back what I said earlier. We're talking about games that are going to kick here shortly. Yes, we are all the way back It does feel good. Brett, and by the way, this is the first of 33 Saturdays that you will have to see my ugly mug all the way through the Final Four Saturdays, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, college football into college basketball. Brett, you agree? You're going to start off the season agreeing with Colin.
Yeah, I know. Dogs and cats getting along. It's Colin like read all my pre-show notes, I think. I agree with everything he said. Look, I talked to Mike Norvell over the summer. He told me this is the best offensive line Florida State's had since he's been in Tallahassee. Despite losing a running back to the NFL draft, he actually believes this is the deepest core of running backs they've had. Florida State doesn't, quote, have a lot of returning starters defensively, but Norvell told me they actually have more experience. They have more players that have actually had play experience. Maybe they didn't start the games, but they got in and played a lot of games. And also something unique for Florida State. It's not often, okay, it's never happened, that a team has gone 13-0 in the regular season and the next year didn't come back being fat, lazy, and happy. Florida State is motivated because of what happened with the playoff, getting excluded, obviously the Orange Bowl debacle against Georgia, and they want to show that they're a much better team than that. I think what Colin had talked about with Georgia Tech's inability to run the ball, that plays into Florida State's strength, the defensive line, and they're going to force Haynes King to try to beat them through the air. I don't think that's going to happen going up against the likes of Thomas, who's one of the nation's top cornerbacks. Let's go, Knowles. First game out of the gate.
Yeah, Florida State, both of their backs could have a big day on the ground. And yeah, you're starting off the show this season agreeing with Colin and then breaking. We have a new record, a new show record for a mention of media days.
I didn't say media day. I said this summer.
It was implied. I would have. Colin was a favorite to bring that up first. But Calabrese, our group of five guy, you're gonna go to You're not going to go Hawaii here. You're going SMU.
Going to go SMU, a former G5 team playing against a current G5 team. And I'm going to go with the team total over 40.5. I play it all the way up to 42. And it comes down to the head coach. Rhett Lashley is a run-it-up kind of coach. His offense has hit 40 or more 11 times in the past 2 seasons. And of those 11 instances, 10 of those teams that they faced were either FCS cellar dwellers or FBS teams that didn't make bowls. So whenever he gets an opportunity to step on somebody's throat and make a statement, he goes ahead and he does it. And when you remove their performance last year against Oklahoma with Preston Stone as their QB1, they averaged 44.6 points per game. He's also, coming out of fall camp. He got healthy after a broken leg last year. He had, it was more for show, this quarterback competition with their QB2 from last year. But I think what's going to happen is both of them are going to play in this game, and it's not going to be an NFL preseason situation where you bring in a backup just to take 3 knees at the end of the game. He's going to run the offense. It's not just going to be vanilla, because in the transfer portal NIL era, it's not just about keeping your starting quarterback happy. It's also about keeping your backup quarterback happy. So I think Jennings is going to have a big game here as well, particularly in the second half as SMU looks to run this thing up. And then finally, the whole offseason, in terms of conference realignment, the throwaway joke was that SMU bought their way into the ACC. It's true, they did. They deferred payment from the ACC for 9 years. It's going to cost them upwards of $200 million to do so. But I think in terms of, bulletin board material, the coach talking directly to the players, nobody wants to be the butt of a joke. And I think as the very first game as an ACC member, as a Power 4 conference member, they're going to want to make a statement against a Nevada team that absolutely could not get after the quarterback last year, finished 124th in sacks. They didn't do enough in the portal to improve on the edge. So I think Stone and Jennings are going to have plenty of time to operate inside the pocket, and the Ponies are going to drop a 50 burger in this game. So like I said, I play it all the way up to over 42.
Hey, look, we all got to shake off the cobwebs. It was nice to see your brain recover from the QB2 to Jennings midway through the sentence. But you're right. SMU has just dominated inferior teams, specifically last year over the past couple of years. The intriguing part about the Mustangs this year is that, Stone and the team in general has struggled when they stepped up in class against Power 5 or Power 4 teams. So we'll see how they fare in an ACC schedule. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the midnight special, the Hawaii Delaware State game. I could tell you that based on the weather, I would look at the under if you can get over 55, but it's a very difficult game to handicap. Like, projecting if Delaware State, they played 2 FBS teams last year, they allowed 9 yards per carry. Almost, I think, 700 yards on the ground, and they got just dominant. They couldn't get a stop. When does Hawaii take their foot off the gas? Do they? Like, it's a very difficult game to handicap. Did Delaware State did they all make it there? Calabrese, do you have any quick thoughts on that game?
Yeah, Delaware State, when you look back at their season a year ago, 1-10, and their only win was over Virginia Lynchburg, that competes at a level of college football that I didn't even know existed, the National Christian College Association. So yeah, whenever they played FCS teams or FBS teams, they got boat raced. When Army, we all remember how much Army struggled in the first 2 months of last season, they beat them 57-0. So I think there's a case to be made that Hawaii is going to save their playbook and try to go vanilla here and not put anything on film that UCLA can use against them in week 1. But even so, Delaware State is going to be hard-pressed to score more than 10 points in this game and to get off the field at any point against the Rainbow Warriors. So I think maybe a first-half play, laying the points, could be the way to go. But you really need to keep an eye on whether you still have, let's call it, 14 hours before kickoff. Make sure that you're not walking into a situation where there's 25-mile-an-hour, 30-mile-an-hour gusts, because that obviously could play havoc with the run-and-shoot offense.
Yeah, certainly something to monitor there. And by the way, there was a little cheap shot there on the Dragons. Will not stand for slander of the Dragons of Virginia University of Lynchburg. All right, let's transition to some futures talk. First, some notable futures. Georgia enters the season as the national title favorite. Michigan, the defending champions, is an underdog to make the college football playoff. Pretty crazy when you think about it. Both teams that participated in the national title last year, underdogs to make the expanded college football playoff with significant roster turnover on both squads. And if you're curious, the lowest win total at BetMGM, UL Monroe, maybe General Booty can be the savior there. But let's talk our favorite futures, and we'll start with win totals. I'll kick things off here. If you listen to our BBOC podcast, you know I've ranted and raved about this one for a while, but I'm going to go with Old Dominion under. I am very low on this team. They lost a lot of talent, and they just didn't replenish it with similar caliber players. They were so fortunate in close games last year. I lost count how many times they won on the last play of the game. They had safeties, blocked field goals that helped them. There's some potential looming regression there, but this team is just not as talented as it was last year. And the schedule for a team like ODU is brutal. Not only the teams that they face, but just the structure of it. So I like ODU to go under. Colin, how about you and your favorite win total?
Let's stay in the group of 5. I'm going to go with probably, I think, the first team I wrote about early in the spring, which is Rice over 6.5. Its juice is still down about -120. I love this team this year. Mike Bloomgren and offensive coordinator Marcus Sopopo changed the narrative with this team from a gritty, grinding, running, just physicality. They wanted to have a vertical passing game about a couple of years ago when JT Daniels was the quarterback. What'd they get through the portal this year? The perfect quarterback that fits their system. They're getting in EJ Warner from Temple. He has 41 career touchdowns. Massive arm here that could really change things for Rice under center. They also have running back Dean Connors coming back. He returns all 1,100 all-purpose yards from last year. They have a potent offense that can get down the field. And then you switch to the defense. Rice has everybody back in the 2 deep depth chart. And the schedule really plays out for an over here. I have them as a minimum touchdown favorite in 5 games, a short favorite against Army, South Florida, and UAB. And there's another coin flip. The ceiling for this Rice team is 9 wins. The floor is 5. I'm going over 6.5. I've bet it multiple times. It's still a good number to me.
Well, you said the ceiling is 9, floor with the end of floor is 5. They're going to win 7 games if you go according to the progression of Mike Bloomgren. Since he got there, if you remove the COVID year, he's won 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then last year 6. Naturally, is this a 7-win season for Rice? Brett, what do you got?
Hey, if Rice keeps them for 14 years, they'll win the national title, I guess. Staying in the state of Texas, I'm going under with the Hook 'em Horn Longhorns, under 10.5. I put this in the app a couple weeks ago. I know that it's juiced a lot, but I really like under 10.5. Even before their running back room was decimated by injuries, this was an underplay for me. Texas has to go 11-1 to beat me. I'll take my chances. They have key losses on the defensive line. We'll see if they can stop Michigan's running game in week 2. Then you have Oklahoma and Georgia in consecutive weeks. Let's see how that works out. Also, Texas has to play their 3 biggest rivals away from home: Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas A&M. Sark said, here you go, Stuck, at SEC Media Days, that Arkansas fans hated Texas more than they liked Arkansas. Sam Pittman actually said, yeah, you're right. How do you think A&M feels when Texas rolls it into College Station, the last game of the year? Despite the injuries, the key losses on the defensive line, the biggest thing why I like under for Texas is there's been 16 schools that have moved to the Power 5 conferences in the last 13 years. Only 3 have had a winning record their first year in their new conference. Look, I'm not saying Texas is going to go 4-4 in the SEC, but they're not going to win 11 games either. Give me under 10.5.
That's a good breakdown, but I hope you're not relying on Colin's Arkansas team to beat Texas. I hope that's not part of it. Calabrese, where are you headed?
It's pretty rare that you want to sprint up to the window after a long college football offseason and bet under, but I think the best one on the board is La Tech under 4.5. The roster turnover was extreme this year, thanks to Colin and all the work he does in the transfer portal and his net tarp. -9 on the net tarp for the Bulldogs. That's worst in Conference USA, tied for 9th worst in America. Sonny Cumbie coming into this year is already 6-18 in Ruston, so he's probably opening season loss to Nichols, who is going to be ranked at the FCS level, away from getting the dreaded athletic director, stamp of approval. You don't need to worry about your job. He absolutely needs to worry about his job. And while I'm on this rant about how bad La Tech's going to be, it's a travesty that they don't put G5 coaches in the first coach to be fired market, because I think he would be right there with Billy Napier and Dave Aranda. This guy is somebody who should not be buying green bananas, because this is going to be his last year at the FBS level. The Bulldogs finished 132nd in run defense last year. And when you look at the back half of their schedule, they're going to pull Jacksonville State, who's going to run it down their throat, a Western Kentucky offense that's going to be really hot. And if Arkansas is in any good shape in terms of where their headspace is at, they have the talent to just run all over this La Tech team. So I think it's going to be very difficult to get to that 5th win. And the final piece of it is there's always an opportunity if you have a transcendent quarterback, if you go for a dual threat kid or someone coming up from the FCS level to bail you out. They do not have that this year. Jack Turner is their answer at quarterback. 5 TDs, 5 picks last year, a sub 57% completion percentage. And he no longer has Smoke Harris, who was one of the most, important skill position players at La Tech in the last decade. His 300 receptions graduated, as well as his 2,000 return yards. So the big play element from Smoke is gone. And I think the whole La Tech season is going up in smoke. So under 4.5.
Brett counting on Arkansas to beat Texas. You counting on Arkansas not to drop what should be a win against a Group of 5 team. Colin knows all too well. Those have happened in the past, but I do like to look.
Yeah. Focused on UAPB. Oh, by the way, I love Calabrese's pick of La Tech on the under. Remember, Sonny Cumbie has lost his athletic director there. So the people that hired him and brought him in are not there. So the writing is on the wall down there in Shreveport. I'm sorry.
Could be Ruston. There could be Ruston. Could be a long season if he even makes it through for Cumbie. All right, let's transition to our favorite other futures. So you can go anywhere with this. We'll save our thoughts on the college football playoff futures for when we reveal our brackets. You can go division, conference if you want to go national title. And if you want, you can go playoff and spoil your bracket too. I'll allow it. I'll kick things off. I already angered our other BBOC co-host, Mike Iannello, with going under on ODU. I'm going to anger our producer, Matt Mitchell, of our podcast with this one. Iowa State to win the Big 12. I think this is wide open. And look, you can always trust their defense. I think that their offense under Rocco Beck really came on last year. It's going to provide a nice complement. And this is just wide open to me. And I think Iowa State is in the mix. Good price available. So I like the clones to come out of the Big 12. Colin, you agree there? And where are you going?
Absolutely agree. My love for Iowa State. Rocco Beck coming to your Action Network NFL shows in about 3 years. I'm going to go over to Penn State. Penn State is making the playoff. I mean, I think they would have made it every single year if the 12-team format would have been there. When you look at their strength of schedule now that they only play Ohio State and they drop off Michigan, their strength of schedule falls down to 33rd. It's usually top 15, sometimes top 10. I have them as double-digit favorites in 10 games. That's a product of the strength of schedule falling off. Then you look at their coordinator hires. They couldn't have done any better. Defensive coordinator Tom Allen has proven at every stop that he's been in that he is one of the best defensive coordinators out there, a former head coach that, James Franklin would be able to lean on and trust and hopefully call plays on 3rd and 4th and short. And then offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki comes in from Kansas. The word on the street is that Drew Aller has grasped the playbook. He has grasped the pre-snap motion, that he's going to be able to run Kotelnicki's offense. That should be scary for everybody else in the Big Ten. Like I said, double-digit favorites in 10 games. 10-2 makes you in the playoff if you're Penn State in the Big Ten. So give me the Nittany Lions to be there in the 12-team bracket.
And I need everyone now to pay really close attention. Drop whatever you're doing, because Brett is going to go out on a big limb for his favorite future. What do you got, Brett?
I just can't believe that people on the streets of Arkansas are talking about Penn State and Drew Aller, but that's just me. Yeah, well, look, Stuck. I saw your playoff picks. You've got more chalk there than a grade school 4th grade teacher. So I don't want to hear about it.
You almost landed the joke. Almost.
Yeah. So left for it's week 0. Let me warm up. And special mention for you, Stuck, a 3-peat media day mention. In Indianapolis at Big Ten Media Day, I talked to Oregon's Dan Lanning, quack. Yeah, Oregon to make the playoffs. It's minus 300. Parlay it with Collins or Stuck's Iowa State to win the Big 12 if you must. Lanning told me how important the trenches are. The Ducks are going to have, among the nation's best offensive and defensive lines. They're projected to be favored in 12 games. He said, look, we're going to be different. The Big Ten is going to have to adjust to us. And finally, last year, they lost a couple of games, 3-point games. They probably could have, would have, should have won against Washington, but they didn't. What impressed me the most was in the other 12 games, they had an average winning margin of 32 points. They outgained opponents by an average of 250 yards. That was total domination. Oregon can lose 2 games. Heck, they can maybe even lose 3 games and still get in the playoffs. Yes, it's a hefty price at minus 300, but I like Oregon to get to the playoffs.
Yeah, it should be interesting watching them in the Big Ten. And going back to one of Colin's points, you mentioned schedules. That's another factor that has occurred due to the realignment of some of these conferences. And it also, either helps or hurts some of the lower level teams in the Big Ten, in Indiana and Rutgers, who are used to having just absolute gauntlets, have their schedules ease up a bit. So we'll see if they can take advantage. For a real long shot and going out on a limb, Calabrese, what do you got?
I'm going to go 16-1 on Texas State scooping up the G5 auto bids of the college football playoff. Listen, last season, GJ Kenny came in to San Marcos, and his job was, a pretty difficult one. Turn this offense around, turn the program around. He did it immediately. They upset Baylor in the opener. They finished top 30 in both rushing and passing, 3rd down efficiency, drives that ended in the red zone with touchdowns, all top 30. So what's interesting is it wasn't a situation where you brought in an air raid and just threw it 70% of the time and you left your defense out to dry, although I will get to their defense in a moment. They bring back all their meaningful skill position players, including Ishmael Mahdi at running back, who led the country in all-purpose yards. And while they lost TJ Finley to Western Kentucky in the transfer portal, they get the rare intra-conference transfer. Sunbelt Player of the Year, Jordan McLeod, comes in from James Madison, and he may be an upgrade at quarterback for the Bobs. So the question really is, can they improve at all on defense? They were boom or bust on seemingly every single play. They finished 3rd in tackles for loss in the entire country, but they're in the 90s in terms of plays from scrimmage that went for 30 yards or more. So they bolstered their defensive line, doubling down on those tackles for a loss by bringing in Stephen Parker, an FCS All-American from Incarnate Word. But the real question is, can they stop those explosive plays, make teams at least earn it a bit more? Because if they do, I think they're going to end up in the Sun Belt title game. And when you look at these arguments between conferences, I think the Sun Belt is right there with the Mountain West, particularly if a team like Texas State stacks some non-conference wins that impress the committee. They get UTSA at home. They get Arizona State, a rare P4 team, coming to a G5 team during the week. It's a Thursday night game. If they win that, I think there's a real opportunity to impress the committee at the end of the season if they go ahead and finish with just 1 loss. So I'm going to go Texas State at 16-1, swing for the fences here for them to make the 12-team college football playoff.
San Marcos will have a say. I wish you luck there. But now it's time, drum roll please, to reveal our initial expanded college football playoff brackets. I will start with mine. Brett took a shot at mine. He said I have chalk everywhere. I have Iowa State, Texas A&M, and Clemson in there. Come on. I mean, I took some chances. It's not an easy exercise here. And I have Ohio State on the backs of their defense getting revenge over Georgia in a very chalky national title. It's college football. It's probably going to be a chalky national title. So I'm sorry, Brett, that now I'm curious to dig into yours after you took that shot. But Colin,
dig away.
It's time to reveal your bracket. I took a peek at it right before the show, and I was disappointed to see you had Ohio State in there. After your hot take that Ohio State might not make it, go ahead and talk us through your bracket and any playoff futures you like in addition to Penn State.
Well, we might as well start at the bottom. The 11 seed I have is Ohio State. I am not confident in this team whatsoever. There are scheduling issues. I think they're going to bite them with going to Oregon. I'm not really sold on what they have on offense, about what they're going to do with explosive plays. A lot of stuff there. You can go visit the Big Ten preview and listen to Stuckey and I podcast about it, why I do not like Ohio State whatsoever. I think the odds are way too inflated for them to make the playoff, and I was nice to slip them in at 11. I think App State is the team that we got to look at from the Sun Belt here. I do not believe in Boise State. If you want to flip on the Mountain West podcast, I kind of rained on the Boise State parade. I did not like Malachi Nelson months ago. I still don't like him today, and he's not even the starter. So there's some issues there. And then you go to Liberty, strength of schedule, 134th in the nation, dead last. They're not going to make the playoff after they got embarrassed in the Fiesta Bowl last year. So App State for me is the one that got in as the 12 seed. I think some surprises from the top four. I do like Iowa State. I predict Iowa State and UCF to be in the Big 12 championship. I just like UCF a little bit better with KJ Jefferson running Gus Malzahn's offense. Big believer in Alabama. I think them and Georgia will be there in the SEC championship. Clemson, I agree with you, Stuck. Our ACC pod, we didn't even, check notes or anything. We both agree that Clemson is going to win the ACC. And then you kind of populate in teams that have great schedules, should get 10 wins. That's Ole Miss, that's Notre Dame, that's Penn State. And oh yeah, Utah's out there too. If any team has proven they can do anything with anybody on the roster, it's Utah. So that is going to wrap it up for my 12. But I mean, as far as the group of 5 goes, I just could not get on Boise. I just could not get on Liberty. So that led me to the Sun Belt.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I didn't mention it. I went with Memphis. And by the way, feel free to comment away which ones you like, where we're wrong. I'm sure we're all going to be wrong. Please don't parlay all 12 to make it. But now it's time to reveal Brett's bracket. And of course, it's the annual love for Miami. Miami's in there. Brett, talk us through your bracket.
You know what's funny, Stuck, because I put out my bold projections on Monday, got several thousand responses. Every single person agreed with me. It was unbelievable. The back end of my bracket, I am not all chalk. Virginia Tech is in my playoff. Iowa's in my playoff. LSU is in my playoff. And like Mike's love for Texas State, I've got Texas State advancing from the group of 5. It is chalky once you get to the semis. That's the thing. The 12-team playoff, more teams will obviously be in the playoff. Sorry, guys, we're going to end up with the same teams playing for the national title. I've got rematches of the Big Ten and SEC title games. Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama in the semis. Oregon, my Ducks, beat Georgia in the title game. So there you go. There you go, Stuck. How about
Iowa in the college football playoff? I got a trivia question for you, Brett. Iowa played Iowa played 3 ranked teams last year. What was the net final score in those games?
Well, they have a different offensive coordinator this year.
Yeah,
so
answer the question.
Was it 13-10, 13-10, 13-10, or was it 112 to 7?
It was 92 to nothing. 92
okay,
to nothing
in
3 games for ranked teams. But all right, so Iowa gets in there for Brett. Let's take a look at Calabrese's bracket. I assume Texas State, which you just talked about, is going to be your 12th team or your group of 5 team. So why don't you talk us through your bracket?
Sure. So in terms of going out on a limb, Texas State, you can make an argument for 5 or 6 G5 teams. But beyond that, I'm with you, Stuck, on Iowa State, the returning production, what they had at quarterback. And I really like their running game as well. So I have them picking up one of the at-large bids at number 9. And what's interesting about the format, I think it's going to take one cycle for people to get used to this. K-State and Virginia Tech, technically they're going to be 3 and 4, at least in my projected bracket. They're clearly not the third or fourth best teams in the entire country, but by winning the Big 12 and the ACC, they go ahead and, punch their way into the quarterfinals. After that, it's a very chalky affair for me. And I wrote up in the New York Post last week about why I like Oregon. This has been a build for Oregon to go from a finesse team, in the mid 2000s under Chip Kelly and having great success and putting up big numbers, but often being exposed by either really good defensive lines or really strong offensive lines. I think about Ezekiel Elliott still running yards up on them in that national title game. They finally have the horses on both sides of the ball. 11 blue chip recruits on the D-line alone in the last 2 recruiting cycles. I think that's going to be the difference. And I also think that Dan Lanning learned a critical lesson last year. He kept Bo Nix healthy for the entire season by not running him. He needs to do the same with Dylan Gabriel. If this guy plays every game this year for the Ducks, they're going to be the national champs.
Yeah, definitely got to watch out for any concussion issues. Hopefully Gabriel can stay healthy throughout the year. I disagree with you on your Missouri pick, by the way. But all 3 of you you were taking jabs at mine. All 3 of you went Oregon, Georgia, national title. I went Ohio State, Georgia, so I can't really say much. Yeah. But
Ohio State's ranked higher.
Those are. I'm sorry. So those are our brackets. Feel free to comment. Let us know on Twitter, as always, what you liked, what yours are. It's a fun exercise to go through, and I'm excited for the first iteration. That'll do it for us. Thank you to Colin, Mike, Brett. Thanks to our producers on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for joining us. And if you're watching on YouTube, again, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content that we have coming up, including our live shows every week, our podcasts every week. And before we get out of here, one final reminder, BBOC is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win, for new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. That'll do it for us. We will be back during the week with our week 1 college football betting previews. Colin and I and the group of 5 guys will have their episodes. We'll be back same time next week, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Don't forget about the Bad Beat Hotline, because we will have our recap episodes starting after week 1. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck on all of your wagers throughout the season. We'll see you out there. Cheers.